While Jacoba Lewis believes the treatment he received in prison has made him better, other inmates believe that prison has made them worse.
Being locked up in prison, it does affect your mental well-being. It's just like these environmental factors, which I continually say must be considered before one is given some diagnosis, some misdiagnosis, or some drug that's supposed to be a cure-all. I'm saying, let's find out what's really going on for us. And being in prison, that's one problem.
Well, what's all this for? Like I said, no use of force is necessary.
Convicted initially for burglary, Carl McEachran returned to prison in 1988 when he violated his parole by stealing a bicycle. For nearly a decade, McEachran's disciplinary problems led him to spiral down through the Ohio prison system, from medium security to maximum security, and eventually to the supermax.
He was the type of individual that was very difficult to work with because in the past he had been very aggressive towards staff, including, I believe, by spitting on staff members and throwing body waste. And so there wasn't a lot of empathy for him. There wasn't a lot of people going to bat for him. The people weren't saying, we really need to help this person. The tendency would be for somebody like that to just, let's lock him away. You know, if this person's going to behave like that, let's just not have anything to do with him. Before we had the system in place that we do now, that type of individual would still be in segregation, and they would probably never get out of segregation.
I don't want to hang up here anymore. He said, oh man, what do you say, 15 in the street? How much you nervous? Who are you?
Being involved in a solitary situation, being placed in a solitary situation, is like being placed in a prison's prison. And that's worse than simply being taken from society and placed in prison.
If you're mentally ill when you go into segregation, you're going to become worse, invariably. If you're not mentally ill, the risk of becoming mentally ill is very high from isolation. Some people dispute that, but in my experience, the people who are so unsocialized and so psychologically fragile to begin with are deprived of any kind of social support, any kind of psychological stimulus, and they just fall apart.
McEachran spent years in solitary confinement, and eventually his psychological problems became obvious. He didn't speak for nearly a year. He began crawling down the cell block on his hands and knees. He told officers that there were cameras in his eyes.
It seemed like a hopeless situation because I was just going down. It's for falling into this abyss, or how would you pronounce it? Abyss. Okay. And it's like you're that's it. It's like, is everybody there? You say, help. You know what I'm saying? And it's really, there's hopeless.